If someone had sat me down years ago and explained index funds in plain English, not with financial jargon, not with complicated charts, just in simple human language, I believe my financial life would look dramatically different today. Because index funds are genuinely one of the most powerful wealth-building tools ever created, and most people either do not know what they are or they have heard the name but never truly understood how they work. By the end of this video, you are going to understand index funds completely. What they are, how they work, why they are so effective, which ones to look at, and how to actually buy one. We are keeping this as simple and as practical as possible. Let's go. What is an index fund? The simple explanation. Let's start from the very beginning. An index fund is a type of investment fund that tracks a specific market index. Now, if that sentence just raised more questions than it answered, let me break it down even further. A market index is simply a list of companies grouped together by some criteria. The S&P 500, for example, is a list of the 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is a list of 30 major American companies. The NASDAQ Composite is heavily weighted toward technology companies. These indexes are not things you can buy directly, they're just measurements, like a thermometer reading the temperature of the market. An index fund is a fund that buys all the stocks in a particular index in the same proportions that they appear in that index. So an S&P 500 index fund owns shares in all 500 companies on the S&P 500 list: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Berkshire Hathaway, and 495 others, all in one single purchase. When the S&P 500 goes up, your index fund goes up. When it goes down, your index fund goes down. You are essentially buying the entire index in one go. That's it. That is what an index fund is. You're not picking individual stocks. You're not betting on one company or one sector. You are buying the entire market, or a large representative slice of it, all at once. Who invented index funds and why it matters? Index funds were invented by a man named John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, back in 1976. At the time, the entire investment industry thought he was crazy. His idea was simple but radical. Instead of paying expensive fund managers to try and pick winning stocks, why not just buy all the stocks and match the market return? No guesswork, no expensive research teams, just own everything and let the market do what it has always done over long periods of time: go up. The investment establishment mocked him. They called his first index fund Bogle's Folly. They said nobody would want a fund designed to be average. But Bogle understood something that most people in finance did not want to admit: that after fees, the vast majority of actively managed funds underperform a simple index fund over long periods of time. Not some years, most years. Over most 15 and 20-year periods, more than 90% of actively managed funds underperform a simple index fund. Today, index funds manage tens of trillions of dollars worldwide. Warren Buffett has called the index fund the best investment most Americans can make. Before he died, John Bogle had arguably done more for the ordinary investor than any person in the history of finance. Understanding what he built and why it works is genuinely important. Why index funds work so well? There are 4 core reasons why index funds consistently outperform the vast majority of other investment options over long periods of time, and each one is worth understanding clearly. The first reason is diversification. When you buy a single stock, your entire investment rises and falls with one company. When you buy an S&P 500 index fund, you own 500 companies across every major sector of the economy: technology, healthcare, finance, energy, consumer goods, and more. If one company collapses completely, it barely moves the needle on your overall portfolio. You are never dangerously exposed to any single failure. The second reason is low fees. Actively managed funds, funds where a team of managers picks stocks and tries to beat the market, typically charge between 0.5% and 1.5% per year in fees. That sounds small, but over decades it destroys a massive portion of your returns, as we covered in video 2. Index funds, by contrast, simply track an index automatically with no need for a large research team. The result is fees that are almost unbelievably low. Vanguard's VOO charges just 0.03% per year. Fidelity's FXAIX charges 0.015%. These are essentially free. The third reason is that most fund managers cannot consistently beat the index. This is perhaps the most important and most counterintuitive fact in all of investing. The people whose entire job is to pick winning stocks backed by enormous research budgets and years of experience fail to outperform a simple index fund over long periods of time in the overwhelming majority of cases. If they can't do it reliably, there is very little reason to believe that individual investors picking stocks in their spare time can do it either. The fourth reason is simplicity. Index funds require almost no active management on your part. You buy them, you hold them, you add to them regularly. You don't need to research earnings reports, track industry news, or monitor individual company performance. The fund does all of that by design. This simplicity is not a weakness, it is one of the most powerful features the product has. If this is finally making index funds click for you and you want more content like this every week, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel right now. It takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps this content reach more people who need it. All right, let's keep going. The main types of index funds you should know about. Not all index funds track the same index, and it is worth knowing the main categories so you can make an informed choice about where your money goes. The first and most important category for most beginners is the Broad U.S. Market Index Fund. These track indexes like the S&P 500 or the total U.S. stock market. They give you exposure to the largest and most established companies in America. The S&P 500 has returned an average of roughly 10% per year over the last 90 years, including all the crashes, recessions, and crises along the way. For most people building long-term wealth, a broad U.S. market index fund is the single most important holding in their portfolio. The second category is international index funds. These track stock markets outside the United States, Europe, Asia, emerging markets, and global indexes that include companies from dozens of countries. Adding an international index fund alongside a U.S. fund gives you exposure to the global economy and reduces your dependence on the performance of any single country's market. The third category is bond index funds. Bonds are loans you make to governments or corporations in exchange for regular interest payments. Bond index funds track collections of bonds and tend to be more stable but lower returning than stock index funds. As you get closer to retirement, many investors gradually shift a portion of their portfolio into bond index funds to reduce volatility and protect what they have built. The fourth category is sector index funds. Funds that track a specific part of the economy, like technology, healthcare, real estate, or energy. These are more concentrated than broad market funds and carry more risk since your performance is tied to one sector. Most beginners are better served by broad market funds before exploring sector funds. Let me give you some concrete examples of well-regarded index funds that are widely used by both beginner and experienced investors. VOO. This is the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF. It tracks the S&P 500, charges just 0.03% per year in fees, and is one of the most widely held funds in the world. It can be bought at most major brokerages and supports fractional share purchases, meaning you can invest any dollar amount regardless of the share price. FXAIX. This is Fidelity's S&P 500 index fund. It tracks the exact same index as VOO, charges an even lower fee of 0.015%, and has no minimum investment requirement. If you are investing through Fidelity, this is a natural choice. VTI. This is the Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF. Instead of just the S&P 500's 500 companies, VTI tracks the entire U.S. stock market, roughly 3,600 companies of all sizes. It gives you slightly broader diversification than the S&P 500 and has a similarly tiny fee of 0.03%. VXUS. This is the Vanguard Total International Stock ETF. It tracks stock markets outside the United States, across both developed and emerging economies. Many long-term investors pair VTI with VXUS to get truly global diversification in just 2 funds. These 4 funds, VOO or FXAIX for U.S. large companies, VTI for the total U.S. market, and VXUS for international exposure, cover the vast majority of what most everyday investors need. You do not need dozens of funds. You do not need complexity. 2 or 3 well-chosen index funds held consistently over decades is a genuinely powerful investment strategy. How to actually buy an index fund. Knowing what index funds are is only useful if you know how to actually buy one. The process is simpler than most people expect. Step 1 is to open a brokerage account if you do not already have one. For most beginners, I recommend Fidelity or Charles Schwab. Both are free to open, have no minimum account minimums, charge no trading commissions, and support fractional share purchases. If you are investing for retirement, open a Roth IRA. If you might need the money before retirement, open a regular taxable brokerage account. Step 2 is to fund the account. Link your bank account and transfer the amount you want to invest. This usually takes 1 to 3 business days for the funds to settle and become available for investing. Step 3 is to search for the fund. Inside your brokerage account, use the search bar and type in the ticker symbol, VOO, FXAIX, VTI, or whichever fund you have chosen. Pull up the fund page and review the basic information, the expense ratio, what index it tracks, and its historical performance. Step 4 is to place the order. Select Buy, choose dollar amount rather than number of shares. This allows you to invest your full amount regardless of the share price. Enter the amount, review the order, confirm. That's it. You are now the owner of a diversified slice of hundreds or thousands of companies. Step 5, and this is the most important step of all, is to set up automatic recurring purchases. Go into your account settings and find the automatic investment or recurring purchase option. Set it to purchase your chosen fund on the same date every month with whatever amount fits your budget. Even $50 a month makes a real difference over time. Once this is set up, your investing runs itself.
Common questions about index funds. A few questions come up almost every time I talk about index funds, so let me address them directly. The first question is, what if the market crashes? This is the most common concern, and it is a completely fair one. The market does crash. It has crashed many times throughout history, and it will crash again. But here is the important context. Every single crash in the history of the U.S. stock market has eventually been followed by a recovery that brought the market to new highs. The 2008 financial crisis saw the S&P 500 drop nearly 57%. By 2013, it had fully recovered. The COVID crash of 2020 saw a 34% drop. The market recovered within 5 months. Crashes are painful in the moment and temporary over the long term. If you are investing for 10, 20, or 30 years, short-term crashes are noise. The second question is, should I wait for a better price before buying? This is another form of trying to time the market, and the research is clear that it does not work reliably. Studies consistently show that investors who invest immediately, regardless of current market conditions, outperform investors who wait for a better entry point over long periods of time. The best time to buy is when you have the money. The second best time is right after that. The third question is one index fund enough? For many people, especially those just starting out, yes, a single S&P 500 index fund is an extraordinarily well-diversified investment. As your portfolio grows and your knowledge deepens, you can add international exposure and eventually some bond funds. But starting with one solid, broad market index fund is not a compromise. It is a genuinely sound strategy. Let's bring everything together. An index fund is a fund that tracks a market index by owning all the stocks in it. They work because they are diversified, cheap, simple, and because most actively managed alternatives consistently fail to beat them over time. The most important ones for beginners are broad U.S. market funds like VOO, FXAIX, and VTI. You buy them through a free brokerage account, set up automatic monthly purchases, and let time and compound growth do the heavy lifting. That is genuinely all there is to it. The investing industry has spent decades making this feel more complicated than it is because complexity justifies fees. The truth is that a simple index fund strategy applied consistently over a long period of time outperforms the vast majority of more complicated and expensive alternatives. I've linked some excellent resources in the description below, including books and guides that go deeper on index fund investing if you want to learn more. John Bogle's own book, The Little Book of Common Sense Investing, is the single best place to start. Drop a comment below and let me know, had you heard of index funds before this video, or is this completely new to you? I read every single comment and I genuinely enjoy hearing where people are in their financial journey. If this video helped make investing feel less confusing, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what comes next. In the next video, we're breaking down why so many people stay financially stuck even when they earn a decent income. And once you understand the real reason, you start looking at money completely differently.